As if the world didn't have enough problems, the British Prime Minister, Starmer, has just resigned. Here to give us some insight into all of that is Dr. Andrew Fox. He has the distinction of being both a priest and a pastor. Is that a distinction without a difference, or is it the same side of the coin? We'll ask him, but we also will look for some insight into the resignation of the Prime Minister of Great Britain, because Dr. Andrew Fox is also British. And he is the author of an upcoming book called Truth in the Age of Applause. I have so many questions for you, Dr. Fox, and welcome to The Truth.
Pleasure to be here.
So your book, I don't know if it violates our trademark or not, but it's called Truth in the Age of Applause. What you trying to convey with that title?
Exactly what it says. The parenthesis of that title is how stupidity is ruining the American dream. So in the world of media, public stages, just go to the Oscars, the Emmys, just go to any public gathering where celebrities are. Someone will make a statement like, you know, my son's come out as a transgender and he's now going to be a woman, and the whole audience stand up and give a 3-minute ovation. Applause does not mean what is said is true. And this is what Dietrich Bonhoeffer was saying in the Second World War. He defined stupidity not as the lack of knowledge or intelligence, but as abdicating your moral, individual judgment and thought just to go along with the cultural norms, like applauding things that are said that are not true. And so using his definition, I home in on 17 steps in this book, how stupidity enters government, school districts, nonprofits, even churches, where applause validates what's being said, but what's being said is not true. And so these steps that I talk about show how it happens and how to speak out against that, how to stand for what is real. That's the emphasis of the book.
I could not agree with you more. Since I was a little boy, I've always wanted to be popular. I don't know anyone who aspires to be unpopular, but I've never really considered myself to be that popular. And I have ascribed it a low level of importance to me personally, because I found that in high school, to be popular, I had to act like I loved to drink alcohol and consume more than was healthy. And in college, I was from Macon, Georgia, and went to Ohio Wesleyan, which was and continues to be a somewhat liberal college with a lot of people from the East. And marijuana permeated the air. I had smelled marijuana once, but I'd never partaken in it. And it was just commonplace. Yeah. And so I found that in order to be popular in college, you had to smoke weed and take drugs, and if you wanted to be popular, and that wasn't important to me to be popular that badly. But it seems to me, I'm trying to validate your point, that being popular has become one of the most important norms of our society, and people are willing to stoop to no known lows to become popular. Elon Musk calls it appearing to be sounding virtuous while acting in non-virtuous ways. Is that what you're driving at?
Yes, it is. And I think the huge elephant in the room is the mayor of New York. His campaign and the applause that he was getting from my children's generation, and I have 3 kids that are in their 20s, 2 of them married. I got 3 grandkids. I'm at that stage of life where I'm learning from the next generation. It's that generation that we're picked to sort of Gen Z. And the promises he was making and the applaud he was receiving got him into office. But the reality of him being in office is proving quite a contradiction. And you could say the same for the new mayor in Seattle. I used to live in the Pacific Northwest. Seattle was a beautiful city. Downtown Seattle is a violent and terrible place to go right now. That's reality. Good policing is needed. But when you have this defund police and all of these statements that get the applause of a whole generation, it's nothing but hot air. As a priest, the authority that you live by is Scripture, and that existed before me. It will exist after me, and what it says in itself is that truth endures. Apply that to just simple things of gender. There's a male and there is a female. Now, I understand there are men that are attracted to men and women that are attracted to women. I accept that. But this transgenderism, to say I am a woman when you're a man, look, an atheist physician will tell you the science defies what you're saying. It's not true. And so all these subjects, all these current agendas that are being jammed down our throat, they do not deserve applause. And if they get them, it doesn't validate the truth, as you say.
Yeah, but that candidate for Senate in Texas has told us that there are actually 6 genders. So how do we know that you're right and he's wrong?
Well, you can either look at
I'm being,
yeah,
that is hyperbole, by the way,
you
just
could
in
look,
case there's any confusion.
no, I'm sure we're on the same page, but you can look at that theologically, or you can look at it scientifically, even socially, and you will come up with the same answer each time. Look, James, that's running, for
Talarico.
Yeah, he's the baby face, smooth talker that will change his politics for his party and his party for his politics. He calls himself a Christian, but he says Christianity is, one of the biggest evils in the world. He gets to preach in his very, very liberal church. He comes out with the wildest statements like God is non-binary. Well, of course, he's playing for the applause.
I don't even know what that means.
Well, that God is neither male or female, but the scriptures gender God as him,
Yes.
and he and father, because we as readers understand that. It's a literary dynamic. And he's saying God is non-binary. He's playing for applause.
But who is rendering the applause? I mean, who wants to sanction that kind of illogical, nonsensical thought process? It is bizarre to me.
Well, I think if maybe for another time, do a deep dive into our colleges and universities, the faculty. That used to be a place where you could float ideas. The professor would argue with you academically, and you'd be right or wrong. And some things would emerge and some things would die away. That's higher education. But today, higher education, especially in the humanities, is encouraging thought that has no real basis to it, like the thing of a gender or gender pulling apart a heterosexual marriage, destroying the role of a father. Look at what the governor in New York's done, taken away the word mother and replaced it with gestating parent. What are you going to do on Mother's Day? Say happy gestating parent? The implications of this nonsensical, unintelligent moves forward are tearing away at what it is to be a true American, of which I became at the age of 31.
So what is it, Dr. Fox? Is it P.T. Barnum being revealed in real time? He famously said there's a sucker born every minute. Is that what we're seeing? We also know that we've been told for the last 60 years that the average reading level of the average American is second grade. I mean, have we just dumbed down our society to the point that these nonsensical arguments resonate with people just so they can sound virtuous or different or whatever their goal is? Or is there something more sinister going on? I very much am open to the possibility that there is some force at work in this country that is intentionally, very intentionally dividing us, that they are working to promote these idiotic ideologies that are so absurd that it separates our people into two different sides. And I just wonder if my instinct might be right.
Well, you raise a very, very good philosophical point there as well. And I think, for instance, the World Cup being staged in the United States is a two-sided coin. One side is hilarious. The other side speaks to exactly what you just said. So 48 nations are present in the United States right now to celebrate this competition that's been going since 1930. The last time it was held in the United States was 1994, but it was kind of overshadowed by O.J. Simpson's chase down the highway. Now it's become something very different. And what the Dutch and the Swedes and the German and the Scottish and so on and so forth, they're all over social media. No one's paying them to do this. They're saying we cannot believe the friendliness of America, the hospitality, the welcome we receive, the refills on drinks that Europeans don't get, and Buc-ee's and gas stations and these ginormous stores and pro bass shops. And they are enamored by the wonder and the hospitality of the community that is the United States. Now, that is the humorous side of the coin. There's a guy called Freddie on social media. No one pays him. He's Scottish, and he's become a phenomena because he's enamored by his visit to NASA, Southern hospitality, college football, Buc-ee's, and so on and so forth. And he's just so appreciative. But all these nations are saying the same thing. The image of America in our own countries is portrayed a different way. So they all came thinking it's about visa issues, it's about immigration, it's about policing, it's about trouble and security. They get here and they find the image that's been created for them is not true. No one in these 48 countries are saying we see the Islamic faith everywhere and it's taking over America. No, they're not saying that. And so we've got a fun thing to look at that for the past 26 years, I've been living in the United States. It's a great place to live. You cannot make it here. You'll never make it anywhere. The
What
other
part
side,
of the country do you live?
I live
heard
in
you say
Austin,
you were in-
Texas.
Oh, Austin. Well, that's
but
kind of a hot seat of
Oh,
liberals.
it is. Oh, it is. And I get a lot of hate mail, believe you me. And, but I hail from Nottingham, Robin Hood country in the UK. So, I bring that kind of dynamic with me. But the way America portrays itself to itself, that also needs to be in question. Look, in the 26 years I've lived in the States, in all sincerity, and I don't mean this harshly, I've never seen so many dumb, not eloquent, they can't really string a sentence together, representatives of the people on a local, state, and national level. It's like, how did these people get there? That answers your question.
Well, I'll tell you my personal belief on that, and I think that's a very important question to look at. I've run for public service twice, and I didn't win either time, but mostly because I got in way too late. That reveals my biggest weakness is a human condition called procrastination. But anyway, people ask me, well, did you enjoy it? Did you like it? And my response was, I thrived on it. I loved it. And they said, what did you like about it? And I said, I learned the goodness of the people with whom I contacted. Just without I can think of 2 or 3 minor exceptions. out of thousands of people, tens of thousands of people who I met, many of whom I met at their front doorstep. And they were generous, they were kind, even those who did not like my politics. They welcomed me into their homes, and they would usually share their events of their life that had been adverse. And it just really warmed my heart. And I do think that we should allow ourselves to be revealed to one another. But the problem, I believe, it's twofold. One, the media doesn't make money by spreading good news. They only if it bleeds, it leads. That's their mindset. And we see it played out every day on the news. The other thing is, and I guess this is not a new phenomenon since the crucifixion of Jesus, I think we have been very cruel to our leaders. And I mean horribly cruel. We criticize them, we criticize their families, and when we don't get our way, some just kill them. So, I live in a very affluent part of the country in Palm Beach, Florida. And people ask me all the time, why do you allow yourself to be put in this position? Why do you do this? And I said, because I care about our country, I care about my kids, and I care about my grandkids. They want nothing to do with it because they've seen how horribly we treat our leaders. So I think some of the blame actually does fall back on the people. We kind of get what we put out. The third point that I'll make, and then you're supposed to be the one being interviewed, but I can't. You've got all my neurons firing.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I lost my train of thought. There was a third point that I was going to make, but anyway, you can respond.
Well, destroying your leaders. Okay, in Great Britain, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has just resigned.
Yes.
I think there's valid reasons why he should have resigned personally, but in the bigger scheme of things, Great Britain has had 7 prime ministers in 10 years. That weakens the nation. So something is amiss there. Either the people refuse to be led, the people cannot be led, or it's like you say, we elect someone into power, and he won by quite a landslide. We elect someone into power, and then we quickly take it from them and destroy them. Well, that's a phenomena that I see over here. The people have elected our current president of the United States. I really like Donald Trump. He can be blunt. He can be extremely straightforward, but the people voted for him, and I voted for him. But the rhetoric is that this is not good for America, but America has voted him in. So what voice, what source, what origin, what base is this argument derived? I mean the Save America Act or the SAVE Act, for instance. I came to this country on a religious workers visa. It had limitations. I couldn't vote. I then became a green card, a permanent residence. I couldn't vote, but I had greater permissions. I then became a citizen. I have all the blessings and privileges of the amendments of the Constitution and so much more, and I can vote. When I go to vote, I've been through the process where I'm proud to bring out my driver's license to say, here's my proof of privilege of voting, and I get to vote. I don't understand why that is being attacked. I've been through the process. And if you go through it, you will honor it. You will value it. It's like your kids. If you hand everything to them, they're going to grow up real bad. But if you make them work for it, teach them consequence, then there's going to be value. And the attack against this voter ID is taking away the natural process of valuing what it is to vote in the United States. And I don't understand that argument as a foreign national that's become an American citizen. It's not the country of 26 years ago. It seems to be more and more and more fractured. And so, yes, I do believe there are forces at work to pull apart the United States. And again, the World Cup and the foreign nationals that are hilariously celebrating the United States. Wouldn't you love to see that from our own people? Wouldn't you love to see a human interest article on mainstream news that makes us all smile, that makes us all become heartwarming? You know, back in the days where we invented things, we landed on the moon. And I know it sounds like rhetoric. Where have these days gone that just make it a heartwarming experience for everyone? That's what I long for. That's what I love.
So I have been advocating to anyone that will listen, as well as our audience on the show, for 2 or 3 years now, that exactly the point that you're making. But I think there is a real opportunity in this country right now for a politician to emerge that will say, to hell with Democrats, to hell with Republicans. On what can we agree? Can we agree that today is, well, we're recording, I usually say Saturday, but since we're the truth, we're recording this on Wednesday. Can we agree that today is Wednesday? Can we agree that it is a pretty day? Can we agree that we should not kill? Can we agree we should not steal? Can we agree that we will not try and take your neighbor's spouse? Yes. On what can we agree? I suspect that if we started making a list, it would be a very, very long list, and it would overshadow the fact that someone is white versus someone who is black versus someone who is Islamic. And just on what can we agree, and then live by that code. Of course, in my view, that should be the 10 commandments, but you can't bring religion into the conversation. So I just say, take the biblical sound away and don't say thou shalt not kill. Just say, we're not going to kill each other, period.
So that is the essence of truth without applause. We should agree on these things, and it doesn't invoke massive applause because it doesn't need it, because they're true. They've always been true, and they always will be true. So why do we have to reach for the bottom of the barrel and the sensational? You know, in England, there are two major parties. There's the Conservative and Labour, and a new party has emerged in Nigel Farage. And he's a bit of a wild card. But he was interviewed the other day. It wasn't the BBC, but he was interviewed and asked, do you want to be prime minister? And his answer was very refreshing. He said, that's not my goal, but if the people want me there, I will do my best. And that was so refreshing. It wasn't listening to a talking head or someone selling himself for the applause. Now, whether he'll make a good prime minister, I really don't know. But I mean, even in our own country, Brandon Gill, you know, a great straight talker who is extremely American. I hope he will gain a greater platform to speak for what does not need applause, but what is simply the American way.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, I've had this notion for many, many years that if you want to find out what is going to happen in this country, you really just need to go travel around Europe. And what you see there will end up here 5 or 10 years later. The first revelation was disco. I mean, I was in England and France in the 70s, and disco was the rage. And sure enough, 5 years later, discotheques were everywhere in America.
Yeah.
Similarly, you've seen these great migrations and the influx of foreign people into countries like France and England, mostly Muslims that have come there. And it's curious to me what the draw is, and more curious why the leadership will allow the influx of these people. And I'm just wondering if that is intentional or whether it is by accident. But it certainly tears the nations apart. And we're starting to see obviously great migrations into this country, mostly Hispanic, which have been shut off. But we do seem to have more people from Indian and Muslim descent coming into America.
You know, John, in my filing cabinet, just, 6 foot away from me here, there is a file. And in that file, there is a letter, a statutory letter from President Obama when I became a citizen. And in that letter, and it's never changed to this present day, except the signature of the president, it's a welcome to America, learn our language, which is English. It's clearly stated, pay your taxes, contribute to the community, practice your faith, raise your family here, work here, participate in the great experiment that it's called, the United States. And there is a paragraph of obligations of what it is to be a citizen. I think sometimes in my thinking, the obligations of what it is to be a naturalized American are rejected. They shouldn't be. When you are a naturalized American, and otherwise you were born in another country, there are obligations that come with this step. They should be made clear, they should be understood, and they should be carried out. So when I read on X or something like that, on my X account, that someone running for office couldn't find somewhere to wipe her hands, so she wiped them on the American flag, that is contrary to the welcome to this country. In that welcome letter, it never states you can bring your national flag. Never. I'm British at the core, but I'm an American citizen, and I fly the American flag outside my house. I will never fly the British flag outside my house because it's not Great Britain. Now, on the inside of my house, on my office wall, I've got a flag framed from 1952 that's British, but that's private in my house here. And so the idea that you can celebrate your traditions and customs and bring them with you must not overrun, we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and what that means. And I don't know that is being taught in grade school, in middle school, in high school, and it's certainly not being taught in higher education. I guarantee if you just did an interview or a survey amongst high schoolers, most of them wouldn't know the rich heritage of the United States. They wouldn't. Imagine this. On July the 4th this year, not only will it be the celebration of the 250th birthday of the United States, but there's a probability, John, that England will play the United States in the World Cup on July the 4th. What
that would be
that's going to be
unbelievable. I would think that would be divine intervention on its face. I mean, how could that happen other than if God willed it to be?
But look at what will happen is if we do get to play as national teams on July the 4th, and let's say that England lose 3-1 and America goes forward or wins the World Cup, the British will not strike up violence in the streets of Boston or Miami or New York or Chicago. The British will go out for a pint with their American brothers, and they'll be hurling friendly sarcasm at each other. Mm-hmm. That's needed. But in the migration of certain cultures where the religion is the culture and the culture is the religion, it's one and the same thing. There are dangers there to the freedoms and liberties that we have in the United States. We don't treat our women that way. We don't treat our children that way. You know, you could be American and atheist. You could be American and Christian. You could be American and Hindu, but you cannot be a Muslim without the Islamic faith, and you cannot be the Islamic faith without being a Muslim. Those two are inseparable. And the documents you receive when you become a citizen clearly state allegiance to the flag. You have to have your hand over your heart. You have to raise your right hand. You have to pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and what it represents. So I think this World Cup game, what will emerge is how we can really celebrate diversity without needing some ridiculous diversity, inclusion, equality officer telling us how to think and what words to use. We know if America play England, they'll all be at the bar buying each other drinks. And there'll be sarcasm over the 13 colonies. There'll be jokes about King George, and no one will be offended, but everyone will have a good time. We need to recover this.
Well, I will certainly drink to that, and I'll also celebrate whoever is victorious. But you make great points, and I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. Dr. Andrew Fox, author of Truth in the Age of Applause, and he is both a priest and a pastor. It has been my pleasure and our listeners to have you on The Truth today. Thank you, and I hope you'll come back.
Thank you.